Welcome, everyone. Welcome to our presentation on green corridors and much more. And let's celebrate Earth Day together, shall we? So a little bit on our agenda. So we'll be covering who are we, a bridge to go home, which is a quick story time kind of thing. We'll be covering what is a green corridor and what is endangerment, habitat fragmentation, and then what can you do as an individual to help save our planet? So a little bit on who we are. So we're Enloe Student Sustainability Alliance. We're a club at Enloe High School. And some of the things that we've been doing are last year we actually created a video to celebrate Earth Day's 50th anniversary, where we asked Enloe students, what does Earth Day mean to you? Another thing that we did was we made a couple of blog posts and we talked about sustainability in terms of skincare, in terms of water treatment. And so that's some of the things that we've been doing. So who are we today? My name is Aishwarya Balaji. I'm a 12th grader. We have Lucianne, Kaden, Louisa, Reagan, and Sharada. So they'll be introducing themselves as we go onwards with the presentation. So let's move on, shall we? So introducing a bridge to go home. So I'll pass that on to Lucianne and Kaden.
So this is our book, A Bridge to Go Home. It was written and illustrated by me and Kaden. So yeah, we'll be reading it out loud to you today. Okay. Rule number 1, stay with Mr. Walker at all times. Are you hearing me, John? John heard Mr. Walker loud and clear, but John loves salamanders.
John loved salamanders so much. When he saw the green salamander munching away at his lunch, he couldn't help but to split from the group, just to stop and stare.
Fascinated with every bite, John lost his footing and tripped out of hiding. Eek! Get away from me, the salamander hollered as he scurried away from John. Please wait for me, John pleaded.
Watch out, John yelled as he scooped the reckless salamander into his hands.
Are you okay? You should never cross the roads like that, mister. A small critter like you could get seriously hurt, John reprimanded. Perhaps you humans should stop building roads through my habitat then, stated Mr. Salamander quite matter-of-factly. Have you guys ever seen any animals try to cross the road before?
So if you would like, we're asking all of you, have any of you ever seen any animals trying to cross the road before? I know in our part of North Carolina, we often see turtles crossing the road a lot. Let's see if anybody else has something to add. Okay, so we have deer and snakes. Lots of yeses. Birds even. This is true, Grace. Birds that fly in front of cars are trying to cross the road as well. Squirrels, deer, turkeys, deer. Yes, lots of deer. Great, thanks for sharing, everybody.
Wow, you can talk? Can all salamanders talk? John inquired with absolute curiosity. Of course we can talk, but only a few of us ever want to, the salamander began. But human, you must put me down. I must cross the road and reunite with my family.
But Mr. Salamander, it is not safe for you to cross here. There are cars everywhere, and you are too small to see. This is true, the salamander admitted, but I don't see any other way to get to my family, do you?
All of a sudden, John approached the road, looked both ways, and ran as fast as he could. Watch where you're going, kid, a car driver exclaimed out his window.
Look, we're here, John said proudly as he caught his breath. You say that it is not safe for me, but that didn't seem like it was any safer for you to do either. Don't your parents teach you not to cross roads like that? Retorted the salamander.
I ought to be back on my way now, but thanks for the lift, human, the salamander said, leaping out of John's hands. But wait, isn't there something more I can do to help you and your family? John cried out, scrambling on the ground to recatch the salamander.
Can you cross the road 1,837 more times? One for each of my species? The salamander asked rhetorically. There's only 1,837 of you left? Salamanders are my favorite animal. That's awful. It's just a rough estimate. My population's been falling since the 70s.
How about I build you a bridge, just like what us humans use? John suggested. Are you talking about those dry, concrete things? No thanks, friend. That's an idea that's bound to get me fried, replied the salamander. A question for you guys. What do you think could help Mr. Salamander cross the road?
Oh, so Marcel mentioned tunnel. Andy says a deer bridge. That's a great guess too. Oh, a dirt bridge. Okay, sorry. Thank you, Andy, for clarifying. Emily and Nathan also guessed a tunnel. And we'll give you just a minute more. We were thinking of something earlier in the week as well. How about us? We can help Mr. Salamander cross the road too. Isla says, I agree. Okay, back to you all in the story.
What if the bridge had grass for you to climb over? The moisture would keep you from drying out then. That sounds swell, but do you really think people will build something so grand for a little old salamander like me, just out of the goodness of their heart?
Actually, my mom is a civil engineer. She builds bridges for a living. What if I convinced her to build a bridge for your species to cross without getting hurt? John exclaimed proudly. If you can get your mom to do that, then I'll make pigs fly, the salamander chuckled. But seriously, kid, I gotta go.
Please wait, John called out to Mr. Salamander. However, he had already disappeared into the rocks.
John, his mother hollered from across the road. I'm here for you. Hey, we found him, the exasperated camp counselor called out.
Thank goodness you're okay, she whispered, pulling John into a tight embrace. Mom, no, Mr. Salamander is getting away, and we have to help him, John yelled, reaching out his arm.
Look at me, John. Are you hurt? Why did you run into the road? She said, pulling him away from the crowded road.
I was helping Mr. Salamander cross the road. His family needs our help. We've ruined their habitat, and I want to make him a grassy bridge. It's the least we can do, John exclaimed, frantically trying to explain the situation at hand.
Mr. Salamander? Didn't I tell you not to talk to strangers? His mom asked, raising her eyebrows. He's a green salamander, and he talks, John replied. Let's talk in the car, John, she stated sternly.
Mom, I promise you, the salamander could talk. His home was cut off by the road, and I didn't want him to get hurt like the rest of the salamanders, John pleaded, tears welling in his eyes.
I think I understand, honey, John's mom empathized. I don't know about talking salamanders, she continued, but at work, I've been doing my best to fight habitat fragmentation too. I'm proud that you wanted to help the salamanders, but I want you to remember to put your own safety first.
How would you like to help me build a wildlife corridor for Mr. Salamander at work? It would be like a walkway for animals, grassy floors, trees, shrubs, and more. It would take about 7 years, though. Any action is better than no action, Mom, John answered excitedly. It'll be worth it in the end, and I'm committed.
7 years later.
The end.
Thank you both so much for that wonderful story. And so we wanted to share with you all, I don't know if we made it really clear in the beginning that this is an original story that Lucienne and Caden wrote and they illustrated. So well done. We really enjoyed this. Thank you so much. So what is something that you can do to help the environment near your house? So we can all be thinking about what we can do in our own backyards as well. So if you have any ideas that you would like to share, please go ahead and type those into the chat. So Carrie says, pick up litter. Yes, I really try to do that on a regular basis, kind of wherever I am. Protect wild places, pick up trash. And you can protect wild places by staying on the trail if you go visit parks, and by leaving the plants where they are, not picking things as you walk along. And you can protect wild places by helping to donate money to organizations that can preserve those wild places and buy them up and save them from being developed. And you could make a, yeah, so Lucy typed a salamander garden. Yeah, so you can create habitat in your own yard, and habitat is, we're gonna learn about that in a minute, but there are things that you and I can create and provide in our yards or in our school grounds and our balconies, and many different ways to provide food and shelter for animals. That's right, and Katie mentioned look and observe with your eyes and not always touching, and working with each other. Thank you, Terry, that's true. Clean up our stream, that's what Marcel said that they do. So, oh yes, Miranda mentions don't use chemicals in your yard. That's right. So be really mindful of what you are putting in your yard, because it gets into our water and into the food supply too. These are all really great ideas. Thank you all. All right, so I believe that we have Lucienne and Caden. Did you have anything else that you wanted to share?
Oh, in the next slide, we were after we heard all the responses, we were going to touch on something that you could do specifically to help salamanders. All
right, so thank you. All right, I continue. And then I know you'll introduce your next section. So here you go.
So the museum staff kind of told us about this, but there are things called like salamander crossing brigades, and I was looking to it. This is, oh yeah, this is specifically in New Hampshire, but basically they're these people kind of meet up. There's like, they have like a whole website, and there will be a link for that in the thing we sent out. But yeah, they kind of, all these people come out on nights where there's going to be a lot of like amphibian activity. Maybe they're going to lay eggs and stuff. So they all come out to a place where they find a lot of salamanders crossing, and they kind of just like help them go across the road quickly. And, you know, they just like, oh, they track their species and everything. And I thought it was a really cool idea. We don't have anything like that in NC, but, you know, you never know. Maybe one of you guys can think of something to help with that too. So, yeah.
Great, thank you. We definitely have some salamander breeding spots around the state, and they probably could use a crossing brigade. And one of our participants was, or I think Laura Best too, they were joking about putting on the crossing guard vests, those really bright neon vests. So yes, safety is essential for everyone.
Okay, so now we're going to cover what is a green corridor. I know we talked about it in the story, but what does it exactly mean? Well, think of it like a bridge that you're going to use to cross a river. When we build roads, as you can see in the pictures, we disturb habitats of animals that originally live there. So we use green corridors as a way to help these animals cross the road, just like the story, like what John did in the story to help Mr. Salamander. And that way, we can reduce disturbances caused by human activities. Okay, so now that we know what a green corridor is, I'm sure you'd like to see how animals use them in real life. So in the next slide, we'll get to see some animals using a green corridor on tape from Florida. So let's take a look, shall we? And yeah, so if you look at the top of the videos, you can see like a structure, like a bridge kind of thing. So that is our green corridor right there. So great. So now that you saw a green corridor from Florida, I'm sure you're asking, are there any in North Carolina? Well, yes, there are. There are green corridors in North Carolina. So there is one in Western North Carolina. Oh, if you can see the picture right here. You can see the bridge, the grassy bridge that we described in the story as well. So
And
now,
Ashwarya, really quickly, would you mind playing that video one more time before we move on again?
sure.
We got a request. It really is just so much fun to see them when you can't see them, right? Using this kind of technology. Great, thank you.
No worries. So this was a video showing you green corridors in action. And I already talked a little bit about how there's a green corridor in Western North Carolina. So now let's play a game. Let's see if you were paying attention, shall we? Okay, so which of the following are animals that use green corridors? Is it a salamander or a polar bear? Type S for salamander and P for polar bear.
Lots of S's. Everyone is really paying very close attention.
Great.
Good job, everyone.
And you're right. Yes, salamanders use green corridors. So as you can see on the slide, their causes of habitat destruction is because of, human activity and also because of overhunting. So now I'll give it to one of my classmates to talk a little bit more about habitats.
Hey everyone. So we mentioned a habitat earlier, and a habitat is a place where an animal, plant, or other organism usually lives. And just a few examples, we have the Nantahala Forest in North Carolina, the Sonoran Desert in Arizona, and of course, the Amazon rainforest. So animals adapt to their habitat in order to survive. And one example of this is a camel. And camels live in the desert where it is very sandy. So they have long eyelashes to keep the sand out of their eyes. You probably also know of walruses that live in the Arctic, and they have a layer of fat called blubber to help them keep warm in the very cold area that they live in. So habitat loss is very important because when an animal's habitat is destroyed, it searches for its resources in another place. And when they travel to these other places, it becomes so that there's too many animals in one place and there's not enough resources for everyone to have, and they won't be able to survive. So a few causes of this would be things like pollution, development, and fires, which you can see in the pictures where a bunch of their habitat is gone and now they'll have to find another place to live in. And habitat loss is actually the biggest threat to salamander populations in America. So we mentioned habitat fragmentation in the book, and what it is when a large continuous habitat area is divided into smaller split fragments. So you can see in the before, it's a nice large continuous area, but in the after, it's broken up because of roads and it's not continuous. And most of habitat fragmentation is because of development like roads or housing. So the effects of this is that animals can become more vulnerable to diseases that they cannot survive, and they also have a smaller space to live in, and a smaller space means less resources, which is not enough for them to survive on. Now let's look at just a few salamanders in North Carolina. We have the green salamander that faces threats of habitat loss, acid rain, and of course development. And we also have the aquatic Neuse River water dog, which is a salamander that faces threats of development, pollution, and habitat loss. So pesticides and fertilizers are a big part of the pollution that affects the habitat of the Neuse River water dog. So just a few things that you guys can do is limit the use of pesticides and fertilizers, and be responsible where you use them, and make sure to clean up so you avoid runoff, and also conserve water. And a thing that you can do for the green salamander is advocate for green corridors to government officials, just like John, to help the green salamander.
Hi, I'm Reagan. I'm going to be talking about endangerment and extinction. So before we start, what is endangerment and what is extinction? We'll talk about that on the next slides, but can you maybe name an animal that's extinct or endangered?
Okay, so in the chat, Reagan, I see koala, Tasmanian tiger, Carolina parakeet as an extinct example. Dinosaurs are extinct, right? Dodo birds are also extinct.
These are some really, really good choices that we have here.
And I have a few other examples. Can I share this with you really quickly?
Yes.
Okay, so we also have the North Atlantic right whale. Some species of salamanders are endangered. The polar bear, and then Andy mentioned thylacine and thylacilio. So Andy, I'm not familiar with what those are listed. So thanks everybody. All right, you can continue, Reagan.
All right. So what does this mean? What is endangerment? So endangerment is when an animal is, the population is dropping. So when this population drops too much, that means that it can get to the point where these animals are extinct. And extinct is when an animal species is completely gone and there's no more of them, which we don't want that to happen because we want to learn about these animals in the future and we want to keep having these and save them. So it's also possible for animals to be extinct in the wild. So they can still be in captivity, like in zoos or aquariums, but we don't have any more in the wild, and they can't live in the wild by themselves because they've only grown up in captivity. So some causes of endangerment and extinction. So one is overhunting, which is a really, really big one. And for example, elephants. One of the main causes for their endangerment is because of hunting for their tusks. And then there's also habitat fragmentation, which we talked about with the salamanders in the story, deforestation, water pollution, and climate change. And climate change actually is a big one for humans as well, because it could be a harm for humans. And here's some examples. Somebody in the chat actually said salamanders as an endangered species, but this one species of salamander is actually extinct, and they were extinct as of last year. So some endangered species. We'll move on, and I can show you some examples and pictures. So we have tigers and rhinos, which are just some examples of an endangered species. Then we have giant pandas, and giant pandas is actually a big one, a big one. So they're a vulnerable species, which means there are very, very few of them left in the wild. And there are currently about 1,864 pandas, which, just like the salamanders, there's only in the thousands, and we don't want that. We want them to stay safe, and we want them to be able to live. And then here's some extinct species as of 2020. The lost shark, which is very interesting to me actually, because the last time we saw them was like early 30s, late 20s, around China, and the fact we scientists have just predicted that they probably went extinct around 2019 or 2020 because we haven't seen them since then. And then also the Spindorf mantis was extinct as of 2020. And then here's this specific breed of salamander that is actually extinct. And the last time we saw them was 1976. And we saw them a really long time ago, and maybe we thought that they were extinct then, but they probably were extinct around 2019 or 2020, just like the lost shark. And I think we're going to move back to Aishwarya for this part.
Yes, it's Aishwarya here. And let's talk a little bit more about extinction. So without green corridors, animals that have their habitats destroyed, they'll be at risk of extinction. So let's discuss this. Which of the following are animals that are in danger of going extinct? So F for flamingo and R for rhino.
Lots of guesses for R for rhino.
R for rhino. Let's see. Yes, you're right. The West African black rhinoceros is in risk of extinction. Things like poaching has destroyed and decreased their population and destroyed their habitat. So let's go to the next question. So which one here? The macaw or the red fox?
Lots of M's being typed.
The macaw? Let's check. You're right. The Sphinx macaw is extinct in the wild, and that's because of habitat destruction, illegal trapping, and trade. So now let's go on to recycling.
Hi, I'm back again. So we're going to talk about recycling now in this bit. And recycling is the process of converting recyclable materials into new ones and new objects. And it helps to reduce pollution caused by waste. So let's play a game so that we can learn what is recyclable and how we can recycle it. And you can also do this at home. So this is just practice, and then you can do it at home by yourself, and it helps the environment. All right, so before we get started, let's learn what all these bins are for. So the first bin that we have is a plastic bin. And we want to recycle plastic because plastic can actually take up to 500 years to decompose. And that's a really, really long time. That's more than 5 lifetimes. So because it takes such a long time, we don't want that just sitting in our landfills or just sitting on the earth, because eventually it could also get into water supplies and it could hurt animals there, and it could cause even further endangerment and extinction. We don't want that either. So our next one is glass, and things that you can recycle in glass bins, like water bottles, like glass water bottles, or there are even those milk bottles, like milk jugs that you get from maybe like Whole Foods or something that has that fancy bottle. You can recycle those in a glass bin, as well as like pickle jars or jam jars. And glass can take such a long time to decompose. Here I have it says that it's 1 million, but it's really undetermined because we haven't been around for 1 million years to figure out how long it actually takes. Our next one is paper. So things you can recycle, like cardboard and newspapers and magazines. And paper takes a little time compared to the other two that we have. But over time, this can build up. And we don't want all that paper because paper is so easy to recycle. You maybe even have some recycling bins at your school for paper, those green bins that you have in your classroom. And then metal is our last one. So we have like metal soda cans or aluminum foil, things like those. And aluminum can take around 100 years to break down. So that's still a lifetime. So now we're gonna play a game. Which bin do you think this box and newspaper would go into? Do you think it would be the plastic bin? You can put 1 for plastic, 2 for glass, 3 for paper, or 4 for metal. Which one do you guys think?
Okay, lots of threes. 3 for paper.
All right, let's see. Is it paper? And it is. So it can take up to 5 years when it all builds up. And again, we don't want that sitting on our earth. We can recycle it so easily. So if you have a piece of scrap paper that you had schoolwork on it and you don't need it anymore, you can just throw it in the recycling bin and maybe it'll become a new piece of paper. All right, and then this looks like we have some bottles and some wrappers, like some candy wrappers. Which one do you guys think? Put 1 for plastic, 2 for glass, 3 for paper, or 4 for metal.
Lots of ones.
All right, plastic. Is it plastic? Yes. And plastic can take up to 500 or more than 500 years to decompose. All right, now it looks like we have one of those fancy milk bottles that you get from Whole Foods and a cup that you can drink like juice or water out of. Yeah, 2 for glass.
Nice job, everybody.
All right, so I have one more little fact to leave everyone with. Oop, just kidding. One more game. So we have a soda can and looks like a tuna fish can. Which one do you guys think this would go in?
Can you see all the guesses coming in, Reagan?
Yeah.
Yes.
All right, so a lot of 4s. Is it 4? Yes, it's 4. It's metal. So it could take 50 to 100 years for just one can to decompose. And when you have that much, when you have a lot of cans, especially if you're drinking a lot of soda, or maybe it's just sparkling water, who knows, it can take a really, really long time to decompose. And then here's my last little fact that I was trying to say early. The world produces about 300 million tons of plastic waste each year, and only 9% of that actually gets recycled. So we really, really want to recycle more of that so that we can reduce waste and we can reduce pollution. And it also can save our oceans and our animals in our oceans, because a lot of the time this waste is going into our oceans and like those big giant waste islands in the middle of the ocean. We don't want that. That's really bad.
And can I add in one more? Things that are not recyclable. Cool. Okay.
Yeah. And then here's
thank
the
you
things
for
that are
clarifying.
not recyclable. So you don't want to recycle plastic bags, styrofoam, plastic straws, or to-go containers. It may seem like they're recyclable, but we don't want to, because that thin plastic isn't able to be recycled. But plastic bags, in a way, you can recycle them. So you can take them back to stores like Target, or Harris Teeter has this, and they have these bag drop-offs. So if you gather all your plastic bags that you get from the store, you can drop them off at the stores, and then they can recycle it. You also, it's better to use just reusable grocery bags. So when you're going to the store, bring one little bag with you, and you can use that to get your groceries. Yes, and we actually tried to weave plastic bags into tote bags earlier this year. It didn't actually get put into place, but we did try to do that. And we'll move on to Louisa.
Okay, hi guys. So I'm going to talk about how you can, like, activities that you can do to protect the environment. So our planet is our only home, so we need to take small actions to protect our environment, and every action counts. So let's see how we can help to protect. Okay, so I want you guys to think, what do you think that we could do together to protect our environment? And what actions do you think we could take? And share your thoughts with me in the chat. And I'll be watching the chat to see what ideas you guys have. Clean up trash. Yeah, that's a good one. Pick up litter. Okay. Recycle. Yeah. These are all good ideas. Yeah, that too. Rehabilitate animals. Yeah. Okay. Let's go on to the next slide. Okay, so there are so many ways to protect the environment, and here's one idea that I want to share, which is cleaning up the beach. And you can bring friends with you and make it fun. And it's really important to clean up the beach so that the environment's clean for people and for animals that live there. Like fish, they don't want trash in the water, and land animals. It's just an important thing to do. Let's go to the next slide. Okay, so then pollution activities. So pollution is a global problem, and water and air pollution are the biggest causes of global warming. Also, pollution causes diseases in humans. So let's see what we can do. Okay, so think about what actions we could take to lessen pollution and type your ideas in the chat. And then there's going to be a list on the next slide that you guys can help with. Wait. Okay, not allow on recycle. Oh yeah, that's a good one. Don't use chemicals. Walk instead of drive or carpool. Yeah, that one's good. I like walking. And it's environmentally friendly. Bike places, yeah. All of these are very good ideas. So then here's the list here, but they're unfinished. So thank you guys for helping with more ideas. So for water pollution, we had do not throw trash on the street. And then for air pollution, we had choose walking over cars. And then you guys also had some good ideas that we could add to this, like stopping styrofoam production, biking places, picking up litter, all of that. So thank you guys for that. Let's go to the next slide. Okay, great job. That's the slide because you guys did a great job. And I will pass it back to Aishwarya.
So it's Aishwarya again. So remember, it's the little things that people like you and me do together that makes a huge difference. Remember, every small action counts, and together we can protect the environment together. So now I'd like to ask if you had any questions for us. Please type them in the chat and we'll answer them live. Thank you all so much for coming, and we really appreciate it. If anyone would like to read out the questions, we can answer them live right now.
Oh, great. So we have been kind of answering questions and sharing comments throughout. So we didn't have any really unanswered questions throughout the program, which was, that worked out nicely. So we really appreciate everybody's participation. And Grace Jackson said, this was great. Thanks for helping me connect to these ideas. Oh, thank you, Laura Beth. She did remind me. We did have a question earlier about what is acid rain. Thank you, Forrest, for reminding us of your question.
Aishwarya, do you want to take it or should I?
You can take it.
Okay. Acid rain is basically when you drive a car releases a lot of pollution in the form of CO2, which is carbon dioxide. And, you know, this CO2 is released into the air and it kind of collects up into the clouds. And when the CO2 is in the clouds, it kind of just makes the clouds, the water in the clouds, because water makes up clouds, a little more acidic. And rain is naturally acidic. However, the CO2 in the clouds makes it even more acidic. So when this kind of acidic, more acidic water kind of rains down to the earth, basically, the plants, they're not really well adjusted to more acidic water. Some are, but some are, they're used to just like regular water. So this can kind of kill plants, and it also has effects on animals since the pH of, since the acidic water is not what their body is used to. So yeah, so obviously some things you can do to help with that are like just reduce your driving and stuff like that. Try to bike more, walk more, so stuff like that.
One quick thing to add, sometimes like I don't know if you've seen like the smoke coming from factories and things like that, that contributes a lot to like it makes the clouds more acidic, and that's another thing that we could work on reducing or limiting the pollutants that factories sometimes release to the air. So that's another thing.
And I like to remind everybody too, even just with the turning off your lights at home, right? Because if we're all reducing our energy consumption, then that goes back to those factories, right? Of just not needing to use that as much. So.
Someone asked where in Western North Carolina is the Nature Bridge?
Marcel, in the resource document, we were trying to include some links for that. Ashwarya and Lucian may be able to answer, but if we can paste that document link here again so that you can see that.
I can try to find it for you. If anyone has any other questions, I can go look it up.
Okay, thank you. And then before you all leave, I know that some participants have had to leave, but we do have Natural Sciences Classroom taking place next week. And kind of along the lines of celebrating our Earth, there is an annual challenge all across the world called the City Nature Challenge, where people try to go out into nature and take pictures and document all of the plants and animals that they can possibly see in this particular time period. And so next week's class is going to be talking about the City Nature Challenge. So and celebrating and appreciating and learning about the things that we all have in our own spaces and backyards and habitats. So. Thank you again for joining us, everybody. Oh, and so one more question that Jennifer Malone typed into the Q&A box. Thank you, Jennifer. She asked, have rabbits ever used the corridors? And so they weren't featured in that particular video, but I feel like the answer would be yes to that. I don't know that we have there's a really cool project, and maybe somebody else from the museum can chime in about the camera critters, where people have set up the little automatic game cameras that take pictures, candid critters, thank you, Laura Beth, that they've set up these cameras that take photos of animals like everywhere, all across the state and all around the world too. And animals show up in really interesting places when we don't see them, when we're not there. And sometimes it's just like the road that the humans use, right? The hiking trail that the humans use. Even rivers can be corridors as well. So it can be like roads and trails and also rivers, because that's a space that animals can kind of move easily along as well. Let's see, any other, okay. Yeah, so Laura Beth was reminding us that you can find videos from Candid Critters on the museum's YouTube channel. It's pretty amazing.
Okay, I couldn't find the exact location of the one in Western North Carolina, but there is an article. It might say the address. I'm not really sure if it has an address, just because it's like kind of, in the road. So yeah.
And a lot of these corridors, so here's something to do, and I'm guilty of this too, when you're the passenger in the car and you're looking at your phone and not out the window. But when you drive along the highway and you look out the window, you can sometimes spot them yourself, because you'll see a really tall fence on the side of the road. And then all of a sudden there'll be a spot where the fence kind of like tucks down. And that's called it's like a guiding fence. And so it's pushing all of the animals and funneling them into that one crossing spot. So if you are looking out your window when you're driving along the highway, you too may be able to spot them, because they're not always obvious if you're not quite sure what to look for. All right. Thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate our Enloe High School students. This is a high school, for those of you not in North Carolina, this is a high school not too far from where the museum is located in downtown Raleigh. And so we're so glad that you were able to join us today, and we appreciate the story that you put together and the games and all of the information that you all have shared. So thank you so much for helping us to celebrate Earth Week and to celebrate Triangle SciTech Expo too. So if you have your video off for our team, if you want to put your video on to wave goodbye, you're welcome to do that. Let me change my view. So bye everybody. Thanks so much for joining us today. And happy Earth Day, and celebrate by going out in nature and being kind to all the living things around you. So have a great rest of your school week, everyone. Bye.